So here it is, going back to the bureaucratic hierarchical model. This school cost $145 million. It was completed last year. Here's a classroom. It has no windows. And I mean, I don't need to say anything more. There's less space per student in this classroom than we provide to an inmate in a high security prison. Now, that's true of every school in the country, by the way. It's true also of your K-8 school. So I've been there. So what I'm saying is that, and it's not a blame on a community. It's just that we haven't thought about it. We haven't thought profoundly about our kids and where they are being placed. And the fact that more of them are not going postal is what surprises me. The fact that you can take these kids and they can stay in these conditions for 12 years and not go berserk. That actually is a surprise. So here's a network model. You can begin to see when I show you some spaces, after some while, you'll begin to recognize what a network model space looks like, what a bureaucratic hierarchical model looks like. A place which allows you to sort of explore yourself, connect with others, connect with the different kinds of learning. That's what network model is. Here's a network model. This is actually, I'm showing you this because this is an old industrial building that was converted to a school. Some of the best schools that we've designed have been in old, decrepit, industrial, commercial office buildings, because there's no expectation that this is going to end up looking like a school, and so it doesn't. And so there are soft seats, there are cafes, there are collaborative spaces, there are project areas and messy spaces. The space looks much more like a professional area for kids. And of course, guess what? The kids don't act up. There's fewer social problems. There's all the fears that we had that kids are going to rip soft seating to shreds don't happen, because when you respect the kids, they respect you in return. Here's an art room in one of the schools and this is what the network model space would look like. This is, by the way, from Broward County. Horrible bureaucratic hierarchical model. Spends a lot of money, by the way, to do this, because some contractor obviously is being kept busy building these things. As you can see, this room has no windows either. Much cheaper solution: give kids network laptop computers, and you're going to be far better off than spending all that money doing that. This is another bureaucratic hierarchical model. This is also in Broward County. And there's a teacher whose only reason for aligning the computers like in a railroad car like this was because she could then see every computer and make sure that the kids weren't doing something they were not supposed to do. So she could monitor them all at the same time. Whereas a network model looks like this. This is actually the School of Environmental Studies in Minneapolis. And if we end up working with your community, we'd love to introduce you to the school and hopefully bring some of that thinking to your community. Again, a library with computers on every desk, not the way to go. This is how you might want to use computers. Have an older kid maybe mentor a younger kid. Or this is a school in India we developed but now 8 years ago. And every kid had a laptop computer, and there was wall-to-wall wireless. So you could be anywhere on campus sitting under a tree and you would have access to the internet. This is how you would teach food science. Remember food science? Everybody has to learn to cook the same thing in the same way at the same time. Doesn't work. That's not how cooking happens. This is what food science should look like. Cooking in a real commercial kitchen, making real food that real people would eat. Now interestingly, these kids were given butcher knives two rooms down the same school, school where the teacher did not trust them with computers, but they're trusting them with these big knives. Because this is old technology, we know it. But the new technology, the computers, we are scared of, so we don't want to give kids access to that. See, they are happy. The teacher comes in dressed like a chef, and he's actually a chef. And the food they prepare is actually eaten. So this is an Australian, no, this is a school from Cayman Islands. And again, kids are proud to be in that school. It's a professional environment, and kids really live up to their potential. This is what a bureaucratic hierarchical model of a playground looks like. This is a brand new school. Most of the bad pictures I'm showing you are from new schools that were just constructed. This is in Windsor, Canada, a school that was just completed last year. This is a very old school in the UAE, and you can see they didn't do much. They put up some tents and put up some seats for kids to sit, and suddenly that becomes a much friendlier place than that. Or this is a school in Japan. You can see how just by putting up some sun umbrellas and some cafe type seating, the space becomes very usable. Or a kitchen garden, a couple of schools in Australia. Again, landscaping. A very boring way to do it. This is from New College in Sarasota. This is from Swarthmore College, an amphitheater, a much more human place. It resonates at a very human level. It's 70 years old and still as viable today as it was on the day it was built. These are some ways of dealing with interiors in schools in Singapore. Very, very crowded, very little land. I saw your reflecting pond, by the way, and I didn't see anybody there, and Angel and I noticed that there was nobody there in front of that pond. But I would suspect that if there's any movement with the water, they will be more likely, and connected to environmental studies and things like that, more likely there will be people in front of it. So here's a public space in schools. I mean, we basically have these corridors and lockers. First of all, the worst place to put a locker is in a corridor, because when your kid is getting to it, there's a whole horde of kids behind, and it's a very insecure place to be, because someone can push you in the locker and you feel unsafe. But somehow this has grown up to be like this. So when we were, well, I'll get to that. Three corridors is a good public space. They should be moving place, but they should be meeting place, and they should be also marketplace. I mean, there has to be stuff happening around. So instead of this, imagine if you could do this. This is what, and we're not using any more square footage. We're using the same amount of square footage, but instead of building corridors, we're replacing them with places that look like this. There are 18 ways that we can learn, but I won't ask you to memorize this. I'll instead give you a very simple way to remember these. Just remember 4 ways of learning. The first way of learning is what I'm doing. It's called campfire. We've learned in front of campfires for hundreds of years, thousands of years. It's called the, in fact, David Thornburg calls it primordial learning metaphors. So campfire is one way of learning, right? That is, you're learning from some talking head. The second is watering hole. The minute I stop talking and I walk out of this room, you guys are going to talk to each other. That's a different form of learning. It's peer-to-peer learning. The third form of learning is called cave, where you are now in your own head. And the cave in the modern society could be in your car, it could be in your shower, it could be lying in bed, it could be reading a book, whatever it is. But when you're in your own head, that's called cave. And the fourth is life, when you get to apply those 3 forms of learning. So if driving a car, campfire would be me giving a lecture about driving a car. Watering hole would be the students talking to each other about driving a car. Cave would be the student going home and thinking about driving a car. And life would be sitting behind the wheel of the car. And unless you have those modes of learning happening in some balance, you don't have a complete school. So when you walk around your school, just ask yourself how many modes of learning are truly happening in that school. Now, our kids have actually destroyed thousands and thousands of years of learning history by saying, well, we don't really care about those 4 modes of learning. If you look at a kid today who's doing research on the computer, listening to music, texting with a friend, right? Maybe eating and doing homework or whatever, you begin to ask yourself, well, what mode of learning is she in? And it's very hard to say, because today's kids have blurred those lines. Now, at any given time, they're probably doing one thing, but they're moving so quickly, they're cycling between modes of learning so fast that they don't have the patience that we had. Like, we are now in campfire mode. They don't have the patience to turn this room into a watering hole environment. So they need the variety of spaces so that they can quickly cycle from activity to activity. So the kinds of spaces we design for our kids has to be very different than the kind of spaces in which we were willing to grow up.